Yes, good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to another edition of the Tyler Werner Show right here on Kutztown Radio, talking Philadelphia sports and whatever else happens in the sports world that is important. Certainly, we got a lot to talk about today, across the board. But obviously, what continues to be a big issue here in Philadelphia still is the Deshaun Jackson release / signing with the Washington Redskins last week. All kinds of layers to this story. And, definitely last week as Deshaun Jackson made his move to the Washington Redskins organization, definitely is a story that has captured a lot of national attention. And definitely we have some, national people to talk about. I mean, Deshaun Jackson this past week, late last week, had a sit-down interview with Stephen A. Smith. Stephen A., the interview, I didn't hear the entire thing. I heard bits and pieces of it. But, I think the general feeling, some people didn't give it a favorable review. I don't know. Really, a lot of people were not satisfied with, really getting into the whole gang association issue with Deshaun Jackson. And, Stephen A. Smith, asked some blunt yes or no questions and this and that. And also last week, Deshaun Jackson, after signing with the Washington Redskins, he had like a press conference. The Washington Redskins organization kind of welcomed him. And no Philadelphia personnel were allowed to speak or question Deshaun Jackson as far as, in regards to his release and the overall fallout with Deshaun Jackson. But, I had to laugh when I saw a little bit of the Stephen A. Smith interview on ESPN. I found it... I don't know, just a little strange the way Deshaun Jackson was dressed with, he had like this Malcolm X vibe going with these big like throwback glasses that does he even wear glasses on a regular basis? I don't quite know. And he had, this like, I guess this really nice vest and not something, I would picture, when I think of this, his whole like rap career, and it was a little strange. I have to be honest with you, but nevertheless, I mean, Deshaun Jackson has not really been too harsh towards the Eagles organization for his release, I guess you could say. I guess he doesn't want to burn any bridges right now, but the thing is, Richard Sherman, pretty famously or infamously last week, kind of called out the Eagles organization and defended Deshaun Jackson, rips into the Eagles organization. Definitely one of the key articles to go through here. I guess Jackson and Richard Sherman have had, they go back a long time ago. Richard Sherman says how he knows, he knows Deshaun Jackson believes him to be a pretty good guy. But Richard Sherman particularly says in this article, this offseason, the Eagles re-signed a player who is Riley Cooper, who was caught on video screaming, the racial slur that he screamed. He was representing the Philadelphia Eagles organization when he said it, because, of course, everything we do is reflective of the organization. And Richard Sherman says, but what did they do to Riley Cooper, who, if he's not a racist, at least has ties to racist activity? They fined him and sent him to counseling. No suspension necessary for Cooper and no punishment from the NFL, despite its interest in policing our use of that word on the field. Riley instead got a few days off from training camp and a nice contract in the offseason, too. Now, I'll stop right there. The Eagles did take a bit of a gamble. As far as reputation goes, when they essentially did not part ways with Riley Cooper, but at the time, they didn't have Jeremy Maclin this season. all they had was Deshaun Jackson. They were a little desperate, I guess, for a wide receiver at that time, and they decided, we might as well bring Riley Cooper back. They put him through the counseling, fine him, whatever. And since then, I mean, things have been all right as far as, Riley Cooper's behavior on the field, off the field, whatever. He hasn't been caught up in any bad situations since then. Now, Richard Sherman says how, Riley Cooper, what did he say? A nice contract. I forget what he said. He got a nice contract or whatever. He got $5 million, as compared to Deshaun. Deshaun Jackson was supposed to get $10.5 million. Now, for what Riley Cooper produced on the field, 47 catches, but he had a lot of, obviously, he had a high yards per reception average. And, he, definitely with Nick Foles towards the end, he had some decent production. Maybe overachieved a little bit. But, I mean, the bottom line is, I guess this is, the Eagles thought that, all right, we can bring Cooper back $5 million, and that's value. I guess that's, both ways a good value, I guess. They're not offering him $10.5 million. So, but anyways, let me go on a little bit here. Sherman addressed the issue of Jackson's alleged gang ties. I'm not going to tell you that Deshaun Jackson isn't in a gang because I can't say that he isn't, Sherman wrote. I can't tell you whether his friends have done the things police have accused them of doing because I wasn't there. I can't tell you what Deshaun does with his time because we play football on opposite ends of the country. Now, after that line right there, I say, all right, that should ultimately be the end of the article. Because, exactly, you play football on the opposite ends of the country. I think with this whole gang tie thing, a lot of people don't understand, I guess, I think what the Philadelphia Eagles were doing here. They've been, and they continue to leak out little, stories or whatever about Deshaun's locker room incidents and off the field stuff. Well, we'll look into more of this stuff. But you put it all together, and the Eagles they wanted to part ways with Deshaun Jackson. They could have, as far as trading Deshaun Jackson goes, they perhaps could have handled that a little better. Again, they kind of got caught with their pants down the way they said, we want at least a third-round pick for him, and, a lot of other teams were wondering, why would they only want a third-round pick for a talent like Deshaun Jackson, a guy who can obviously produce on the field, more than a third-round, more valuable than a third-round draft pick. But, I mean, nevertheless, as far as I'm concerned, the Eagles ultimately waited for this, this little gang story to come out, released by a reporter, like a freelance, no-name reporter. And, I guess that would be a good time to sell to the fan base. Oh, he's Deshaun Jackson and gang ties. We don't, that's not good. We don't want somebody associated with gangs like that and this and that. And, I think the Eagles knew what they were doing here as far as wanting to get rid of Deshaun Jackson. It doesn't have everything to do, the whole gang thing is not, what this entire release of Deshaun Jackson is about. It's just the Eagles organization, Chip Kelly, Howie Roseman, Jeffrey Lurie, whatever, they use this as the time to, where they could, just get rid of Deshaun Jackson and, I guess be on the fan base's side. And, of course, we all know the Eagles, Chip Kelly, and do not really want to speak too much about it. They don't go into, obviously they haven't gone into too much detail, and they haven't said anything really about it since releasing Deshaun Jackson and addressing the gang ties. But, leaking all these little stories, and, you can see where it's going, essentially. And, as good as Richard Sherman is of a defensive player, I mean, I don't understand how you can exactly put yourself in, I guess, Chip Kelly's position. I mean, you're not coaching the team. You're not dealing with you don't, essentially, we don't know, and I've continued to say that on this show. We don't exactly know. Chip Kelly's taking a gamble with this. Now, the Redskins, I don't know. I mean, who knows how full they might have their hands here. I mean, apparently Deshaun Jackson skipped out on his on the first voluntary Redskins work off-season workout or whatever yesterday. Now, apparently Deshaun Jackson had a scheduled vacation or something when he was still with the Eagles. Essentially, he planned to go on vacation, before this signing with the Washington Redskins. And, I guess, now he's with the Redskins. They have the voluntary practice, but Deshaun Jackson, still had this vacation planned, I guess, and is not going to take part in it. I mean, I don't know. I can't speak to but I don't know. The Redskins might have their hands full. I don't know. I think the bottom line is what it comes down to is that Chip Kelly in particular did not want to deal with Deshaun Jackson. And the rest of the team as well. I mean, now there was of course there was an anonymous article also that came out this past week. Basically, some speculate it's a player. The thing is about this is that there's been like this whole rumor that Deshaun Jackson had an argument once with Chip Kelly and cursed out Chip Kelly and whatever, but it never came out until apparently now there's I guess there's rumors that this happened. I got to think that if something like this really did happen during the season, some kind of Eagles beat reporter or someone would have had to have caught this by accident, and this would have came out at the time. So I mean, again, there's a lot of rumors that floating around. We don't know exactly what's true and what's not. But I mean, the overall feeling is that Deshaun Jackson was not well received by the Eagles locker room. Now this, and again, we don't know the validity of some of these reports that come out either. I mean, I think it's just things with, the Eagles releasing bit by bit, the media, etc., to kind of further validate their reasons for releasing Deshaun Jackson ultimately. And again, a lot of it, as I said before, was a value judgment. Paying him $10.5 million. Certainly, Deshaun was productive. It's a bit of a risk, and as far as from a talent standpoint, because obviously this left the Eagles with a hole to fill, and Chip Kelly is taking this kind of risk. I mean, Bill Belichick in the New England Patriots organization has done stuff like that, like this, and yet year after year they've remained a contender. With Chip Kelly, I mean, it's his first year in the NFL. We don't totally know how this move is going to pan out. Chip Kelly believes in what he's doing here. He believes in his system. He believes he can essentially find a replacement, perhaps in the draft, and essentially, plug in this hole of Deshaun Jackson and, move forward. Now, again, it's a risk. I mean, they come out in the first few games of the season and this offense isn't looking productive, then, things, obviously, people are going to point at this whole Deshaun Jackson release as a mistake. So, definitely a risk on Chip Kelly's part. But, for the sake of interest, before we head to the first break, let's go to this article, I guess, of this anonymous, these anonymous comments from somebody.
Who is this?
Yeah, we don't know, but here's what it kind of basically had to say. Funny how Jackson has this anti-bully thing, and he thought he could push Kelly around. He found out otherwise. His being cut had nothing to do with the gang stuff. The team knew it. Everyone knew he had ties. Those were his guys. That's okay. What put him out was his selfishness. He can try and spin it all he wants, how he's a team player. He's not. I'll put it this way. When it came out last Friday that Jackson was released, more than a few guys were happy it happened. They said good riddance. He had no real connection with anyone. You see little kids and how they cry and whine when they don't get their way. That was D-Jax, another source said. I don't think Jackson gave Kelly the respect he deserved. Kelly tried to reach Jackson plenty of times and Jackson tuned him out. Then you look at how a team functions when everyone is out together at charity things or social stuff. He was the one missing. It was like he was in D-Jack's world and we just happened to be there. It ticks me off that Kelly comes off looking like the bad guy here. It wasn't just Kelly that wanted him gone. Kelly got a lot of feedback from guys that felt we were better off without Jackson too. Kelly is very much a player's coach. His office is open to anyone. Now Jackson is the Redskins' problem. We have something good going here, and it's not going to get better without, and it is going to get better without Jackson. He had to go.
Who is
so?
This?
Yeah, I mean, again, we don't know who this is, but nevertheless, I mean, the overall feeling is that from the locker room and other people around, and obviously the coaching staff, they wanted Deshaun Jackson gone. And it's also funny how the article mentions Jackson is now the Redskins' problem. So I guess good for the the Eagles feel good about what they're doing here, and the locker room I guess says good riddance overall. So with that in mind, we will cut to the first break. 610-683-4859 right here on the Tyler Werner Show on Kutztown Radio.
It's Telescopic Topics, a look into the world above us.
Hello, my name is William Boblitz. Have you ever dreamt of flying beyond the confines of our atmosphere? Have you ever thought that maybe you could be an astronaut? Many people dismiss these aspirations due to the high cost and lengthy selection process of becoming an astronaut. But now, Citizens in Space is hoping to change that for common people around the world. Until about 10 years ago, a person had to pay dearly for a chance to take a trip into space. One man, Dennis Tito, was reported to have paid upwards of $20 million to take a trip outside of the atmosphere. In 2004, Spaceship One was built for only $10 million, which was half of what Dennis Tito was reported to have paid for his single trip into space. Spaceship One then successfully flew 2 missions within the period of 2 weeks, and thus changed the future of space travel for everyday people. A division of the United States Rocket Academy, Citizens in Space is a program designed to take average people, like you and me, on missions in outer space. The program works like this. When the United States Rocket Academy acquires contracts for flights into space, the Academy grants Citizens in Space authority to give one of those seats away to any person of their choosing. This project is also designed to get small scientific projects into space as fast as possible in order to aid research for the scientific community. These citizens selected for spaceflight usually serve as payload operators and experiment overseers for the missions they join. Space travel used to seem like an activity only for the elite, but lucky for us, Citizens in Space is changing that one flight at a time.
Telescopic Topics, a look into the world above us. Stay tuned to KUR for more Telescopic Topic, and for more information or to hear the segment again, click on the Telescopic Topics icon on the KUR website at www.kutztown.edu/KUR. Telescopic Topics is a production of the KU Physical Sciences Department and is recorded by the KU astronomy students in the studios of KUR. Thank you for listening, and we'll see you next time.
12:22, right here on the Tyler Werner Show on Kutztown Radio, talking Philadelphia sports. Obviously, a lot going on with Deshaun Jackson. Definitely some other things going on. Philadelphia Phillies right now sit at 500 record. Of course, they were supposed to have their home opener yesterday. That got postponed due to the rain, and got postponed in the day. I guess this is why they have that I guess that day afterwards. In case it, they can just have the game the next day, and I guess that's what they're doing. But right now they sit at 500. I mean, they just came off of playing the Chicago Cubs, one of the worst teams in the league, winning 2 of 3 against them. But I don't know. It seems like they got some. They got Milwaukee on the horizon, and perhaps some better teams. So maybe that'll tell us more about them. Of course, the Flyers we'll get into a little later on the show. College basketball. I think it's funny. Last week, I didn't really think of what was going on with college basketball, and it kind of goes back to my point that the whole concept of the big field of 64, and now it's kind of more than 64, but it seems like the general interest of the college basketball tournament quickly diminishes after the field narrows down, and I guess all the people that they fill out their brackets, and a few games go wrong, and pretty soon their brackets are essentially meaningless, and they quickly lose interest. That's, to me, and then quickly the interest in the talk about March Madness just seems to dwindle, and I kind of find that a little funny. But nevertheless, the UConn Huskies topped the Kentucky Wildcats 60-54 last night in the championship game. So that concludes that tournament. And I mentioned this before, a while back. It's not often that we talk about wrestling on this, WWE wrestling on this show, but this past weekend, the WWE had their Super Bowl, I guess you could call it, of their whole pay-per-view schedule, their season, whatever you want to call it, their year. The big thing coming out of this, I thought that was funny, and I know there's one of our regular listeners on this show, who we nickname Batman Wayne out there. I know he watched WrestleMania, and it'd be interesting to maybe get a little bit of a review, or just like an overall thought on what happened. I think rather humorously, there's this, for those who don't know, there's this legendary wrestler in the company who goes by the name of The Undertaker. And every year at WrestleMania, the Super Bowl of WWE events, he's had this winning streak going for over 20 years. He entered this year, and he's getting up there in age. I mean, he's almost 50 years old now. But he's still out there wrestling. He was entering this year's match with a 21-0 record, which every year seems to become a bigger and bigger deal. And for those who don't know, Brock Lesnar, he wrestled a long time ago, and then he actually had a short stint with the Minnesota Vikings about 10 years ago, and they cut him for, kind of being rough on the field and having arguments, and yeah. But he went to UFC, and he eventually became UFC champion, and now a couple years ago he came back to WWE wrestling after retiring from UFC, and he broke this winning streak of The Undertaker, this WWE wrestling winning streak. And now obviously it's a scripted event, it's a scripted company, etc. But if you look at like the video footage of when this streak ends, and knowing that it's scripted, all these adults in the audience, you see their reactions. I mean, it's pretty, it's humorous. It's like the WWE has this power that even though, well, most adults know, I would hope know that it's scripted. They, seeing the reaction on their faces, it's just, it's kind of mind-boggling. And again, I'm calling out Batman Wayne, who's probably listening to this show right now. See if he can maybe give a little spin on what's going on there in the with that whole big scene from WWE's Super Bowl event, essentially, of this past weekend, and amongst other things in the show. But that's that. So I mean, that's a big thing coming out of I guess the wrestling world in a sense. I guess the power that, even though it's a scripted show, the power that they still have to, mind boggle their fans with something like that. And Brock Lesnar, is essentially is the guy that ends the streak. The only WWE and former UFC champion in that company's history. So that's quite something. But anyways, we'll move back a little bit to the Deshaun Jackson talk. Now, last week, I want to get into this as well. I heard Michael Irvin on the Tony Bruno and Harry Mays show. I listened, they're two good Philadelphia sports talk guys, and and Michael Irvin was getting interviewed by them, and Michael Irvin says how, essentially, he said how now the balance of the NFC East has just changed in the Redskins' favor, essentially, is what he said. And, I think it's a bit of an overreaction on Michael Irvin's part. And, I think a lot of people are going to overreacting to this whole Deshaun Jackson being on the Redskins organization and team. And now having to play the Eagles twice. And, this Eagles secondary that, does not look too much of an improved squad over last year's secondary. They added Malcolm Jenkins. We'll see how it pans out. But, thus far, we'll see what they do in the draft as usual. But thus far, still a lot of question marks in the Eagles secondary. And it'll definitely be interesting to see how, those games shape up against the Redskins. But I wouldn't go so far to say that the Redskins are now the perennial favorite of the NFC East. Now, the Redskins defense, they added a couple guys. I don't know how much they have left as far as the guys that they added, but obviously it's a new coaching staff coming in. I'm not saying the Redskins are going to be that bad. I actually think maybe the Redskins can be, right 7-9, 8-8, right there with the Eagles, behind the Eagles. But I think it helps when you have the New York Giants, who I don't know, they have a lot of question marks. And as far as the Dallas Cowboys are concerned, if nothing else, another 8-8 season for them. We probably can't expect anything more than 8-8 with them. Probably, they only got worse as far as I'm concerned. So, I don't think this really is too bad of a situation as far as Deshaun Jackson going to the Washington Redskins. The Redskins will probably have a pretty good offense. RG3, I guess wasn't ready to come back last year or whatever. It'll be interesting to see how, if he can continue to evolve his game after his rookie season where he was getting banged up, and I don't know. They have Alfred Morris, Pierre Garçon obviously will be opposite of Deshaun Jackson, so they can have a pretty good offense, certainly. But then again, can RG3 stay healthy, and how their offensive line is not up to par perhaps, and again, how many off-season workouts or whatever is Deshaun Jackson going to cooperate? here and not be as much of a headache as perhaps the Eagles organization believed he would be. I mean, to me, that's what a lot of it comes down to. I mean, and Deshaun Jackson has had his issues of concussions at times, and so, I mean, it'll be interesting to see. And obviously, the NFC East this year plays the NFC West, division loaded with brutal defenses. And so, I mean, I don't know. It'll definitely be interesting to see how it pans out. But I don't quite believe that, just because now the Redskins have Deshaun Jackson, that suddenly they're the division favorite. And some people go as far to say is now they're a possible Super Bowl contender.
It's an outrage.
And, yeah, I mean, I don't believe that for a second either. Again, I think people are going a little too far there. But certainly, I mean, the Redskins can be decent. And I hinted last week, I think that, as far as a personnel standpoint goes, I think Deshaun Jackson, I think it's more along the lines of it's a bigger loss for the Eagles as far as personnel and talent on offense goes than it is a gain for the Washington Redskins. Again, in this Chip Kelly offense, Deshaun Jackson had his most productive year. By far overall. He had he had 9 touchdowns, 82 receptions, etc. And definitely his speed and his deep route running and etc. helps spread the field, spread the defense for other guys on the Eagles field. And it'll be interesting to see like how maybe a guy like Darren Sproles coming out of the backfield, what they can maybe do as far as spreading the field goes. And obviously, who do they draft? Do they go wide receiver in the first round, or maybe the second round? Do they try to orchestrate something to maybe move up and get a guy like Mike Evans, or I don't know. And you're welcome to share your thoughts on what the Eagles, what you want to see them do in the draft. As do they try to get somebody on defense still, or are you now convinced that they got to go wide receiver first? I don't know. But of course you can do that on the Facebook page at facebook.com/Tyler Werner Show. Or as usual, call in at 610-683-4859. But again, I mean, I'm not overhyped as far as the Redskins are going. I'm not intimidated that Deshaun Jackson is now going to be on the Redskins organization. And I mean, again, it'll be interesting to see if, I guess his, shenanigans, if you want to say, will continue over on the, I don't know. But the bottom line is, I guess the overall feeling, the Eagles locker room didn't like him. Chip Kelly was tired of dealing with him, and they used this. They're using all these little articles and this gang association stuff and gang signs and etc. As I guess a linchpin, just like, hey, this was right for us, despite Deshaun Jackson being pretty darn productive on this roster. This was still the best move for us. So, I guess that's that. And again, Michael Irvin thinks that I guess apparently that the Redskins now are the division favorites. We'll wait and see what happens. But obviously, Chip Kelly is now under pressure to replace this. Either replace Deshaun Jackson with somebody in the draft, or with whoever he has already and a combination of both. Whoever he has already to make have this offense come out and produce like it did, and maybe even better. I mean, I don't know. I mean, again, you got Zach Ertz, who I think can come out and definitely be a weapon this year as a tight end. Nick Foles with a full off season as the starter, heading into the offseason as a starter. I mean, I got to think hopefully he's going to improve a little bit too. Maybe not be quite as gun shy. I don't know. You got to be a bit of a risk taker at times. You got to be able to fit the ball into, tight windows and, at the right time and, etc. So I'm interested in seeing how this Eagles offense comes out with or without a replacement for Deshaun Jackson. Because nevertheless, I mean, they still got Darren Sproles now in the mix. Obviously, they got LaShawn McCoy, who they can maybe preserve a little more with the addition of Darren Sproles. Again, Jeremy Maclin and Riley Cooper, I mean, those guys are a bit of a smokescreen. But I guess Chip Kelly believes that, I mean, they brought both of them back. Chip Kelly believes that they can be, they can fulfill what they need on offense. Again, Chip Kelly not, it's saying it's not an offense that is driven by one guy or whatever. He's a system guy, but at the same token, I mean, you at least need good talent in there to at least execute the system and hopefully make it better. So the talk continues on here with Deshaun Jackson and how the Eagles are going to fill this void and etc. and all these little things that the Eagles are kind of putting out there or whatever, reasons as to why they released Deshaun Jackson, kind of covertly, I guess you could say. Now, running into the next break, I actually want to point out something that's going on with KUR before we head into the next break. And I actually voiced a promo. I don't know if you listen to KUR throughout the day, but maybe you've heard me speak about this. We have an event at Young Ones Records, April 19th, the Saturday before Easter. It sounds like it's going to be a pretty fun event. We're going to have a lot of crew members from KUR, hosts, etc. Apparently, I hear there's going to be like special vinyl editions of Soundgarden, of a Soundgarden album and a Nirvana album. I guess in light of the 20th anniversary of Kurt Cobain's death, and we also have like this Plinko board that we're actually going to bring to we're going to resurrect it. I mean, it sits over in the production room, and there's going to be like prizes, and it's I guess going to be a little like a Price is Right kind of thing. I mean, it sounds like it's going to be a fun event, and I definitely encourage music fans out there to come out to this record store again at Young Ones Records on April 19th. Not this Saturday, but the next Saturday, and who knows, maybe you can win something off of our customized KUR Plinko board. But with that in mind, we'll head to the next break right here on the Tyler Werner Show on Kutztown Radio.
Attention May graduates, KUSSI is sponsoring the Spring 2014 Graduation Festival on April 7th and 8th from 11 a.m. to 7 p.m. in the multipurpose room of the Student Union Building. The Graduation Festival is a one-stop shop for all your May graduation needs. You will be able to verify the status of your graduation application, purchase your cap and gown, receive graduation tickets, order your class ring and announcements, and much more. The festivities will include giveaways and a chance to win one of our great graduation gift packages. All May graduates must attend the Spring 2014 Graduation Festival. If you are unable to attend this event or would like more information, please contact Matt Lothar, the Student Services Coordinator for KUSSI at 484-646-4338 prior to the event. Congratulations, it's time.
Come on out and join the KUR crew at Young Ones Record Store on Saturday, April 19th, as Kutztown's big record store releases some exclusive vinyl editions of music from the likes of Nirvana and Soundgarden. Members of KUR will be there all day from 10 a.m. to 6 p.m., playing music and giving away exclusive KUR merchandise. Music lovers will not want to miss this event. Again, the date is Saturday, April 19th from 10 a.m. to 6 p.m. at Young Ones Records, right here in Kutztown. KUR hopes to see you there.
Hi, hon. I thought you were coming home early.
Yeah,
What's the matter? What happened?
and I realized today just how much I really love you.
What do you mean?
I almost got killed today.
Oh my God.
I was rushing home to catch the game. There was a train coming. I thought I could beat it. I was just about to go around the gate. Something made me slam on the brakes.
Oh, thank God.
Coffee went everywhere.
I'm so glad you're all right.
Wasn't worth the risk. Never see you again. Never smell your hair.
Don't even say that.
Never see you walk.
I love you.
I'm sorry.
It takes a mile for a train to stop. Don't try to beat a train, or someone you love will get hurt. Look, listen, and live. This message brought to you by Operation Lifesaver and this station.
12:43 right here in the Tyler Werner Show. Yes, perhaps a little taste of one of the new, special edition vinyl records you can get at the Young Ones Record Store event that we're doing on April 19th on Saturday. And, I guess coincidentally, the PSA or the ad I was talking about with my voice on it just played this past break. So how about that? I don't think that was planned. I think that was just pure coincidence. But anyways, this Saturday, well, this weekend, I should say, we have the Masters golf tournament returning. That obviously a big deal for in the golf world, and of course, Tiger Woods will not be competing at this
Yesterday I did pull
Masters tournament. He, of course, is ongoing back issues, and apparently he is having, some kind of surgery, to remove the nerve from his back or something that's been bothering him. I don't know. So, I guess no Tiger Woods at the Masters tournament, but we'll do a little preview here of the Masters golf tournament. It's going to be Augusta National Golf Club in Augusta, Georgia. Date all weekend, April 10th to the 13th. Par 72 golf course. The winning share, $1,440,000, and of course the defending champion of this tournament this year is Adam Scott, who shot a -9 in the tournament last year, 9 under par. Be interested to see if he can repeat, and perhaps that can be made more possible without Tiger Woods not being a part of the tournament.
Yesterday I did pull out.
Of course, you got Rory McIlroy on the player watch. He's trying to kind of bounce back and get his name back in the top ranks of the golf world, and maybe come back and win a Masters. And obviously, I don't understand how these golf rankings work, because apparently, Tiger Woods has been the number one ranked golfer in the world. I mean, I've read articles on here before where it says, the number one ranked golf player in the world, Tiger Woods, etc. It's funny. It's because obviously Tiger Woods hasn't won a major tournament altogether in several years now. But somehow, they still had him ranked the number one golfer, and obviously now he's not going to be in the Masters tournament, and his status in general this year is kind of up in the air with his back. I don't know what standards they go by when they rank golf players like that. Tiger has won minor tournaments here and there, but he hasn't won big tournaments, and for whatever reason, he's still been ranked the number one golfer in the world. But so I guess with that in mind, he's not going to be. Your number one ranked golfer is not going to be in the Masters tournament this year. But I mean, to me, I don't care about that. I think I think I'll have this Saturday off, and I'll probably watch some Masters golf and just enjoy whoever is there. playing in the game. It doesn't have to be one guy there that you get behind. I think just relax and enjoy the game, and with or without Tiger Woods, essentially. So, with that in mind, let's move on here, because what we also got going on this weekend, and the rest of this week is some big Flyers games, essentially to close down the regular season. Last week, this past week, the Flyers have definitely had some struggles. They've had continued struggles, actually, scoring. Last Tuesday night, they have a hard, a competitive game against the St. Louis Blues, the number one team in the Western Conference. It went all the way to a shootout. It was a scoreless game, which is in this day and age in the NHL is extremely rare that it goes to a shootout scoreless. And TJ Oshie from the St. Louis Blues, who is is incredible when it comes to shootouts. Unfortunately, that's what it came down to, and the Flyers could not get the win at the St. Louis Blues home stadium or arena, whatever, and they at least picked up a point out of that game over a tough team, losing 1-0 essentially due to the shootout. But then Thursday night versus the Columbus Blue Jackets at home, and of course former Flyers goaltender Sergei Bobrovsky was in the net for the Blue Jackets that night, and unfortunately, the Flyers once again could not score in this game, and they lose 2-0 to the Columbus Blue Jackets, who are they're a little behind the Flyers in the Metropolitan Division and the playoff race, but it's unfortunate. I mean, the Flyers are now 0-3 on the season against the Blue Jackets, I believe, and they've, for whatever reason, they have a big matchup problem or something against the Blue Jackets. And once again, they had another scoring problem here. Back-to-back shutouts against the against the Blues and the Blue Jackets. And it's unfortunate too, because they didn't get destroyed in these games. I mean, they took the Blues to the shootout, didn't give up a goal until then. The game was right there. I mean, they played well defensively and goaltending, obviously, and same with the Blue Jackets game. But offensively, they couldn't put the puck in the net in those games. So that's a bit unfortunate here as we get down the wire in the playoff race. And then Saturday, they were at the Boston Bruins. Another tough team, obviously, that they just had a competitive game with the Sunday before. And they lost to the Bruins 2-5. They came out pretty flat up in Boston, and Boston is, I think now they're overall. I think they're the best team in the NHL. They perhaps surpassed the Blues point total last week, and they're looking like the Stanley Cup favorites that I kind of had them being this season. So. It'll be interesting to see, how that pans out. But nevertheless, the Flyers come out flat in this game, and, essentially, you lost 4 straight, even though, one of those two of those losses in that 4-game losing streak were in overtime. So, they got 2 points out of those losses. But then, of course, the next day, Sunday, they played the Buffalo Sabres, who were... I think by far the worst team in the NHL. Many would go as far to say they're an AHL team and not an NHL team, and they're missing 10 players and this and that, and they're just depleted at this point. Flyers get a 5-2 win over them, as they clearly should have, and so the Flyers getting their scoring mojo back, but albeit against a bad team that everybody, expected them to win. And they, it was a game that they better not have lost. So, they beat the Sabres. And now tonight, they are at the Florida Panthers. Another another team that's not very good, that is not in playoff contention, and the Flyers should hopefully beat. But their opponents get progressively tougher through the week. Thursday they got the Tampa Bay Lightning at Tampa Bay. They're fighting in the playoff mix. And then of course after that they got one last game with the Pittsburgh Penguins this Saturday, 3:00. Between the Masters golf tournament and that game, I'm definitely gonna have to try to tune into that game with one of the few Saturdays that I'll have off actually. So definitely a big game there that could definitely speak a lot. And then after that, they got the Carolina Hurricanes on Sunday afternoon to close out the regular season, and hopefully by that point, maybe the Flyers will have a locked up playoff spot. And how they can do that, we'll take a little look at the NHL standings here. Now the Pittsburgh Penguins, as usual, they have this division locked up, the Metropolitan Division. The Rangers are ahead of the Flyers essentially by 2 points, essentially by a win. And the Flyers have played one fewer game than the Rangers. So depending on how the Rangers and the Flyers finish out, definitely they could potentially swap positions there, or it could remain the same, with the Flyers being the third-ranked team in the Metropolitan Division. Now they're tied with the Columbus Blue Jackets right now. No, they're not. They're 2 points ahead of the Columbus Blue Jackets, but they've played the same amount of games. So, the Flyers stay ahead of the Blue Jackets, essentially, and they'll have a playoff spot locked up no matter what. As long as the way the division alignment works, if you're the third best team in your division, you're guaranteed a playoff spot. And, the way it looks right now, the Flyers hopefully they'll win tonight. And, I don't know. They give they always come out with fire against the Pittsburgh Penguins. And they seem to give the Penguins a headache every time they play them for the most part. I don't know. Maybe the Penguins come out with a revenge factor. I don't know, but maybe the Flyers can pick up between the Tampa Bay Lightning and the Penguins, maybe win one of those two games, and be 2-1 on this week, and then they got the Carolina Hurricanes the last game, they're pretty much out of playoff contention. And, hopefully they can pick up a win against the Hurricanes. So, hopefully the Flyers can finish strong here. And, I think as long as they win two of those games, they should be fine. And as far as clinching a playoff spot goes, I don't. As long as they get in the playoffs, that's fine. I don't care where exactly they finish. Again, expectations weren't too high entering this season for the Flyers. At least from my perspective, and I think overall, they'll finish about, right where I thought they would finish, with like a 5th or 6th playoff seed, and I think that's all fine and dandy as far as as far as the Flyers season goes. So that's where we're at there. Next week, at this time, we'll know who the Flyers are playing in the NHL playoffs, unless some kind of mathematical disaster happens and and somehow the Flyers miss out on the playoffs. But I don't think that's going to happen. So nevertheless, we'll close out the show on another NFL rule. It's kind of been a bit of a tradition I find in recent weeks on this show. All kinds of rule changes with the NFL. They're now implementing a rule that players can no longer dunk the football on the goalpost, on the field goal post in the games. Now I think a lot of this kind of has to do with when Jimmy Graham this past season, after scoring a touchdown, one of his many touchdowns, dunking the football through the goalpost, I guess so hard that it kind of bent the goalpost, and the game was somewhat delayed because they had to fix the goalpost. I think it's kind of funny because I remember several years ago around this time, when I was still in high school, Governor Mifflin, for strength class one day, we went outside to do a little running or something, and there were some clowns certainly in this strength and conditioning class with me. Actually, some that I actually grew up good, friends with, and played football with and stuff. And I remember like two of these kids, who I guess will remain nameless, obviously, but they decided, like, as everyone was slowly making their way out, they went to the goalpost on the far end of the football field on the Mifflin Stadium, and they decided to jump up there and hang on to it, and these two essentially they ended up bending the goalpost. And I thought it was funny because a few days later in the next strength class or whatever, the teacher, the strength and conditioning teacher for this class said, hey, they fixed the goalpost, and there was a bill for it. Now you guys are gonna have to figure out how you want to pay for it. So, I think it's personally, it's a funny little rule change that they're implementing here, and I think if some people are not happy about this, they like the dunk and etc. And I think maybe a good solution for this would okay, they can't dunk the ball on the main goalpost that they use, but why don't they have sort of a mini replica off to the side of the field, and then maybe Jimmy Graham can dunk on that. I mean, in a way that could maybe please everybody a little bit. They gotta just have a little replica off to the side, and maybe they can still kind of have that in. I don't know, but nevertheless, essentially, there's no more dunking the football on the NFL goalpost. And that'll conclude things today on the Tyler Werner Show on Kutztown Radio. Thanks for tuning in as always. And if you want to catch this later on or whatever, if you missed any of it, check the Facebook